Over to you.
Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks Vidooly for having us. We were talking about esports, and I can't think of a more diverse and also a more apter panel than this. I know we say this before every panel discussion, but you'll know in 15 minutes why I'm saying this. Just a quick round of introduction. We have Mr. Anirudh Nagpal, who is the CEO of Ebullient Gaming. We have Anirudh Pandita, who's the founder of Pocket Aces. Khurana, who's now with a consultant at Paytm First Games. And Salone Sehgal, who's a general partner at Lumikai, which is a fund. And Sidharth Kedia, the CEO of Nodwin Gaming, which is a rights owner in the esports space. Right? Guys, how are you firstly doing? How's the lockdown treating all of you?
I'm in Mumbai, so I'm probably I'm still stuck and locked in, and there's really not much avenue of looking things changing here. So yeah, is there anybody else from Mumbai?
No, I live
out of Mumbai 6 months back.
Anurag, how about you?
I am stuck at home in Gurgaon. Yeah, no different than what Salone is saying. So we are all stuck at home, and work from home is more tiring than work from office, if you really ask me.
Yeah, we're all dying. I was just talking to Anirudh about it just a few minutes back. Anyway, Anirudh, talking about it, I know that one of the companies which were amazingly well prepared for the lockdown is you guys. So tell us a little bit about that. No, I think it'll be interesting to start off with.
Yeah, I think the way we prepared for the lockdown is that, we didn't know there would be a lockdown, but we were quite at that point seemingly paranoid about what will happen. So we had started doing kind of business continuity prep by end of Feb itself. So we're saying things could go bad. How do we keep shooting for our social distribution businesses? What does it look like for game streaming, for esports? Those are things we were going to release later in the year. And so I think for a bunch of our businesses, we were just a little earlier in the game. And so that's why we've been able to continue working through this terrible time. But it's still tough, right? Like as Anurag was saying, right? Like mentally, it's often challenging. I was saying it's reminding me of a really, really long flight where you just keep seeing a lot of content and playing games and it doesn't seem to end. And you wake up and you kind of have a headache, and sometimes you get some food and you feel slightly better and have a drink, but it's just continuously going. So I think mentally, it's very tough for people as well. And of course, you were, one of the things that I was saying to you as well, we live in many different Indias, right? So most of us are lucky to be in a good India. So there's also guys who are suffering. So it's hard to see that, and it's hard as well. So yeah, for us overall, it's been quite good. Our preparation has given us that edge to move forward compared to some of our peers.
Right. Sid, you're based out of Gurgaon, right?
Yeah, I'm based out of Mumbai, but I came to Gurgaon a week before the lockdown, and I have been in Gurgaon since.
Oh my God.
I am in no rush to go back to Mumbai, given everything that's happening out there.
Have the locusts reached you?
Well, they just bypassed Delhi.
They're heading to Mumbai now. So
they're already in Mumbai. I thought they reached Khar yesterday. I was told by a friend.
Well, I live in Khar. I haven't spotted them yet. So.
Hey, wonderful. Hey, listen, I since this is a panel where almost all of you know each other, I intend to keep it as informal as possible. Rather than I think directing a specific question at you, I thought it'll be good to just talk about something, and feel free to jump in at any point. At first, though, I just thought we should do one context setting, right? I understand that a lot of our audience today are from the marketing industry, so they'll care a lot about the opportunity for brands, etc. And they're probably looking at this as an emerging industry more than anything else. And of course, for some of us, this is more than that. To set the context in terms of what do we mean, when we say esports, and how is it different from casual gaming, and what is hyper casual gaming? Anirudh, do you want to probably take a quick stab at that?
Surely. So I think that we can see this as gaming as a whole, right? The gaming has three type of categories, which is a casual sort of a gaming. Then we have a professional gaming. And then we also have gaming, which is played on a daily basis in terms of everybody is a gamer, that we call that type of gaming as well. So for example, if you're playing Candy Crush as well, you can be termed as a gamer. Going ahead playing Ludo, you can be termed as a gamer. So that's an everyday gamer sort of a system that is working on right now, which is also booming. The second part comes in as a casual gamer who practices gaming on a daily basis, plays games which are slightly on a heavier side. For example, we can say PUBG Mobile, or for example, any other game which is FIFA, or plays Call of Duty on PS4 or on PC or something like that. And then we have a pro player as well, which is another emerging market, which is esports, which means that you are playing the game professionally. You're competing with people, you are competing in tournaments, you're competing against your friends. And that is a market which has turned from a slightly, that also has 2 or 3 tiers in which you are playing at the highest level. Then you are competing with your friends. And also some people are also into real money gaming, that they pool in money and they compete against each other. So that's the kind of structure that the gaming is basically going towards, and every of the segments is evolving.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add to that, right? I think there's been an evolution in the users in India, right? And Anurag's been in this sector for a while, so he can definitely add more flavor to it in a second. But you had essentially an economy 3-4 years back where you didn't have, data was not cheap, right? And so downloading a 1 gig game on your phone was unthinkable, right? Second was your phones were not good enough to often support that kind of game, or not many people had those kind of phones. And third is when you think about, how these games of complexity, which involve both skill and strategy, evolved in the West, they evolved primarily through PCs and through consoles, both of which have really poor penetration in India. Right. So that changed, all that changed. Jio changed that. Phone manufacturers like Xiaomi changed that, because now you have cheaper phones, you have powerful phones, penetration improved, game titles emerged. And so you went from what was called hyper casual gaming, as Anirudh explained, which are lower skill in many ways, but entertaining nonetheless. So it can require a more casual interaction with the game. So this could be games like Candy Crush, like we used to play Snake on Nokia, if you remember. This is one of the earliest casual games that I can think of. But then there are games which require a little higher degree of skill and strategy. And that is actually now a spectrum. Your hardcore games have learned certain social aspects that, social games that we used to play on Facebook had really popularized. And some of the hyper casual or casual games have taken some of the more strategic elements. So there's actually a spectrum today of these games. But I think the big change I feel which has come in India is in the last year, the emergence of PUBG Mobile. I think is the game changer in terms of, there is always one title or one thing that breaks open the market and takes it to the masses.
Exactly.
And when the Prime Minister also knows the name of that game, then it works. So I think that sets the context a little bit, and skill and strategy both very important. And the more that is required, the more it becomes a harder game to play and requires skill, and therefore is often more entertaining to watch, which we'll come to in a second.
Right. And this is a question. I'm directing more at Anurag and Salone, but you guys feel free to jump in. It's Anurag, for you, for instance, I've been in this market, for the longest time, right from your Red Octane days. How have you changed? How have you seen the audience? How have you seen the players and the streamers? Their demographics and their characteristics change over time?
Okay, so I'll take you in a different era when I got into gaming. That is in '99. My first gaming venture was back in '99, and of course it got acquired in 2001 by Reliance. So we were part of Reliance. One thing that we noticed, because I consider Reliance doing 2 revolutions in gaming industry for gamers per se. One which we have forgotten now because it's of the past. Most of the gamers were just born in that duration, is 2001. That's when Reliance launched the first CDMA network with Reliance Infocom. That was the major jump for us. This is pre-Jio era. At that time, even we had we had our own store where people could go and download the games and then play it. So to my surprise, we were getting 700,000 downloads a day on that black and white phone. So we understood that people have appetite. And there also, if you remember, for 2 years, Reliance didn't charge anything for data. So data was completely free, much higher bandwidths in terms of, because it was CDMA, so compared to 2G, the network was better suited for gaming. So we started developing hyper casual games, or casual games as you might put it, for Reliance Infocom handsets. I remember the size of the screen was 90 by 65 and 2 colors, black and white. They were even of a lower quality than what Anirudh said. We started playing Snakes. That was still 4 scales. But it was clear that gaming is going to be big in India. Only problem was the device accessibility, which Reliance first changed in 2001. And looking at those numbers, and I think the trend is same from that time to this time. So when we used to get 700,000 downloads a day, we were like, where is this coming from? Where is this segment coming from? So we did a survey back then. Back then also we realized that the majority of users were from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So even if you look at today's trend.
Oh, even back then that was the case, is it?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you. So nothing has changed in terms of dynamics, because my hypothesis on this is that getting the time span from a guy sitting in metro where he has so many entertainment avenues is gonna be much harder than getting that attention from a tier 2 or tier 3 town. And tier 2 and tier 3 town people have that aspiration value is much higher than the metro kids. So trend has not changed. If I look at data, I don't have access to that data, but my hypothesis is that even right now, most of the traffic for even PUBG Mobile is coming from tier 2 and tier 3 towns, not just metros.
Understood. Yeah.
So
Sorry, talking of...
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I mean, esports has become a recent phenomena, but, for those of us who've been in the games industry, the first esports championship happened in the 1980s.
Yep.
There was Space Invasion, which happened, 10,000 people came in and they played that game, right? So esports has been a phenomena which has existed in the games industry. And if you've been a gamer, you'll know that. What changed for esports? And yes, of course, there's the connectivity, mobile phones, etc., but Twitch happened, right? Twitch essentially was quite seminal to galvanizing what esports has now become. From an India perspective, I find, and I'm an investor in the games industry, I've come from the games industry, built games. I find the word esports is used very loosely in India. Every other startup is either a real money gaming startup or an esports startup. And when you start asking people and digging into that and saying, okay, what do you really mean by esports? They're not able to understand or articulate their vision. And so I look at it from 3 different lenses of what esports looks like. One is from my lens as a venture capitalist, the other is from the media industry, and the other is from a startup ecosystem. So if you put numbers into perspective, games is a $150 billion industry. Sports is a $600 billion industry. Esports has somehow not even been able to hit $1 billion globally. And this is because there are primary stakeholders in esports which attract a large part of their revenue, which is who makes money in esports. The platform holder, the distributor, the teams, or the IP holder. In football, nobody owns the game of football, but League of Legends is owned by Riot Games.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit different. So I think if you're a brand or a marketer and a influencer, it has given birth to new business models, which is absolutely fantastic. And you cannot ignore esports because of what gaming has come to represent, and those games and esports are so closely intertwined. But if you are building a business around esports, and if you're trying to build a platform, etc., really understand what that would mean and where that revenue stream is going to come from, because that, for me as a venture capitalist, I'm a little bit cautious around that.
Right. So, difficult question, right? I'm just taking off from what you said. You said that if you're a brand today, you cannot ignore esports, right? But the reality is, brands ignore esports, right? Not globally, but even globally also. I'm just extending the point you made, which is about what would it take for this to break out like the way sports, has broken out, right? And even in my own case, I think it was 2015, the first time when we did this event called Brew, where I think Akshat from Norbin had come and he spoke about esports. It was the first time, all the clients, 200 clients in a room got to know about, okay, this is happening, etc. Right? At that point, we were playing clips from elsewhere, and the difference is today we're playing the same videos that were shot in Tyagaraja Stadium, which is full for a PUBG game. Right? And Tyagaraja Stadium in Delhi is also where Pro Kabaddi League and Badminton League happens, and the stadium has never been full for any of those things. So my question really is, if you look at the Indian perspective, which I'm assuming is what many of the audience are really clear about, what could be that tipping point? Is it a great success case? If you ask me, I would probably say the best success case in India probably is Mountain Dew, the Dew Arena and all of that. Is that the thing? Sidharth, you want to take it? What do you think is what could be that point?
So Karthik, good question. I think, and I couldn't agree with Salone more that this is a struggle that we have on a daily basis when we are sitting in front of either a brand or a prospective investor. We start from what is esports, because it comes from e-gaming to e-sporting to gaming to sporting. And when we are asked how big is that market, we have the same conundrum. We're like, sports is this big, entertainment is this big. Is esports, let me define how esports is. And a lot of what Salone said, a lot of components are not captured in the esports market. So a game becomes a PUBG Mobile, but esports component of PUBG Mobile is a very small sliver, whereas all of that from a industry classification goes under gaming. But I think the question really is, and the comparison, Karthik, would always be to regular classical sports as the industry has known it. I think there is a critical base which is required of people who are playing that game, just playing that game, not competitively, but just playing that game. And what League of Legends did to Western Europe, US and China is what PUBG Mobile has done to India. It has created that critical mass of people who are interested in playing and hence interested in seeing others play. So that's one thing which has happened. Two, if you historically see from MLB to EPL to IPL, sport breakout happens when a broadcaster comes into play and takes it to the masses. So Twitch did that to esports globally, and hence esports became what esports is globally. In India, while YouTube has done that, I think now we are reaching that tipping point. And let me share some numbers with you. We were in the middle of doing PUBG Mobile Premier League South Asia when lockdown hit. And we had to postpone that, and then we restarted after almost 2 months. But what we did during that time was we launched something called PMPL Scrims, where there were competitions happening every day. And the viewership of that on a daily basis crossed 1 million views on YouTube. PMPL South Asia, when it has come back, we are already seeing in the first 3 days, 22nd to the 24th of this month, we reached about 3 to 4 million views per day. The next stream starts from today and it goes on till the 14th. And I'm assuming we will start hitting more like 5, 6, 8 million views per day. And I think that's the tipping point. So now if you ask me, now if a brand, also I think, Karthik, brands have to start looking at things differently. So in classical media, when you were looking at TV or digital or print, you were always looking at reach and frequency. I think digital as a medium allows you to break away from that generic reach and frequency and become much more focused about engagement, about loyalty. And I think that's something that esports is able to give, because you are able to target your audience. You know exactly who is watching you, who's interacting with you. And I think to cut a long story short, this is the tipping point. The tipping point is here and now. And we are already seeing evidence of that. In the last 2 months, the number of brands that have reached out to us, the ones that we didn't reach out to are reaching out to us. The ones that we tried to get a meeting for 2 years are now reaching out to us saying, we want to do something in esports. They still have to be told what esports is. But I think those doors are opening now.
Yeah. Again,
I wanted to actually add to that, right? A few things. So The ecosystem today reminds me a lot of the way the digital video ecosystem was in 2014, right? Almost 5-6 years back when we started, right? There was like some interest. Brands were like, kids seem to be watching this. Like, what do we do, right? There's like this soft interest that you start seeing. And then attention minutes start moving en masse, and then the advertiser has to move, because ultimately advertising and marketing, you're a proxy for attention, right? So when attention moves en masse, you have to move. So I think we are at that point now where Sid rightly said the attention is moving. The second thing which is really important is that as Salone said, it's an ecosystem that has to develop, right? Publishers have to invest. After publishers, you have to have people playing. Then you have to have a broadcaster, and then you have to have talent teams which support that and leagues which support that. So I think for us, from a local point of view, we looked at that ecosystem and we said, where can we add value? And we felt broadcast was the weakest, and so we've attacked that piece of the problem, right? Nodwin is obviously doing a great job creating the properties that will have any value, like they will sell to me, right? That's the media rights that will have value tomorrow, and we will sell to advertisers. And there is often, a difference between, countries in this, right? So when we compare to China, the big platforms make money through tipping. So they don't, like 90% of their earnings are through tipping and gifts. So they're not an advertising based platform. So their offerings are different. The understanding of advertisers is different. Twitch is different. They were desktop focused. So it creates an interesting opportunity. India is an animal of its own, and we have to create an India first solution. And the kind of brands that are associating with gaming will improve drastically over time, right? So initially you will always have people who are early adopters, but then you can see Fanatics done a deal with BMW. You have Gillette has participated in America or around the world. MasterCard's involved. These are big brands which take brand safety seriously, which take broadcast seriously. They have serious standards of working, and they write serious checks, right? They're not messing around. So I think that level of organization, the people on the stream actually are bringing it. Actually, if I can, brag a little bit for everyone involved, I think there is a lot of confusion, right? Because kids start this revolution always. Right. Like these are generally, like, if you sign a streamer, they're often the streamer is a minor. Like you have to talk to their parents to sign them. Yeah. So how do you enforce contracts? How do you get performance? How do you get safety? You don't want another moment where someone rants and there's a OnePlus logo on the back. It creates all sorts of issues. So we have reached that moment where these different things are starting to get organized. So you will see ad dollars moving big time in the next 3 years.
One thing in that direction, and Anirudh, well, we just spoke about it a few minutes back. I'll keep it to all of you. I think some of those inflection points are definitely, one is the gender aspect of it, right? I think one of the most refreshing things about gaming is that it's so gender neutral, to a point where the existing Olympic champion, when it was an exhibition sport in the last Winter Olympics, is a girl from Canada. And I was reading the latest IAMAI study, and just during lockdown, there's been a huge surge. This is not just in esports, but in casual gaming as well, of the number of women who are getting into this, new users who are getting into this, right? Is this, do you think this could be a good inflection point for a market like India?
So I'll jump into that. Actually, I don't agree with the point that it's gender neutral. I've built games for female audiences. 60% of casual gamers in the world are women, but yet less than 20% of games are built for them. The amount, and if you look at some of the largest titles, they're heavily skewed for men. So games are, it's sadly an industry, and look, I mean, the panel, like I'm the only woman on this panel, right? So it is sadly, games have been rather male dominated, and that gender skew is changed largely because of casual games. It changed in 2011. Farmville emerged, Facebook games emerged, mobile happened, made games accessible, and now suddenly there are more games. It is still to a point where I think even in India, the skew for gamers is 70-30. There's 70% male gamers and 20 to 30% female gamers. So I think that skew exists, though I'd say things are changing. There are definitely much more products out there which are geared for female audiences. Game design for female audiences has to be different, and there are a number of studios, whether it's a Robin Games or Double Loot Games, etc., which are now raising money to build more games for wider audiences. So I think things are changing right now, but India's I think a little bit further from that, because I've spoken to 140 developers in India, and it's been a struggle to find women CEOs and founders. There are a handful, I can name them, who are building games. So I think that culture still needs to emerge.
Right. But beyond that, Salone, just to maybe just go back to that point, I found that very stark when you mentioned it. Why is that even globally that skew in terms of this? It's a very supply side skew, right? Which is very strange. In most industries, the supply molds itself to meet the demand side. Why is it like? What is the biggest reason for that?
I think it's largely been a constraint of capital and financing, right? Typically, if you look at what is the financing sources for game studios, it's been largely publishers, right? That's one. Secondly, venture capital to games it's a very recent phenomena. I used to work for a fund called LVP, which was investing in games since 2010. We backed early companies like Supercell, Unity, etc. But venture capital for gaming has only taken the fashion of Silicon Valley now in the last 2-3 years, and in Europe, right? So I think it's largely a capital constraint as well. Also, the kind of games that get for women, it's like either you're a pink princess or you're playing teen romances. Where is the diversity within that to appeal to a wider audience? And I know we're slightly digressing from the esports thing, but I'm very passionate about this, so maybe we should talk about this offline.
Really, we should really talk about this. Should be a separate webinar itself. I wonder, in cinema there is a Bechdel test, right, which is a test for women in cinema. Right? Are there two women characters? Do they talk to each other? Do they have a name? And do they talk to each other about something that is not a man? Right? And that thing ends with someone saying the last movie I saw was The Alien. So I wonder if there's something like that from a gaming perspective.
I have tons of research, so we should.
Yeah, I think I think from a sports point of view, it's really important. Both from a gender diversity point of view as well as diversity of player, that role models emerge. Role models are very important, and we have to promote them as key stakeholders in the ecosystem. So, for example, we did we promoted some of the best women players in PUBG. Now, I'm sure PUBG has a huge male skew, but to promote that, you're providing that there should be no difference. Like, it's not like there is some physical difference in terms of how you can play, right? To me, having that is important, and promoting that is important. And I think once more role models emerge, then you will see more of these skews change. In general, India has a skewed internet numbers, right? As your platform grows, you grow more male skew. So that is a more macro issue, and again, like a different topic. But but I think supporting these guys is important.
Yeah. Talking about role models, I want to bring you in, Anirudh Nagpal, on this one. I'm thinking what Anirudh Pandita just said. It's very similar to what happened with poker in the US in the early 2000s, right? Chris Moneymaker and all the role models suddenly happened, and then the whole game sort of picked up, right? What are some of the things that you're doing in this space, and what are the results you're seeing?
I think that as Anirudh sir mentioned, he rightly mentioned that anything that has to get picked up, it has to have a person who is being looked up, right? So 2017, I think that was the year that was shaping up the gaming system, right? Which had one role model who was coming in and putting up videos based on entertainment, but had some gaming clips in it. So that was Carry Minati. 2017, he launched a channel called Carry's Life, right? So in 2017, that particular thing was not yet discovered by the Indian audience. And then Carry Minati had a mainstream audience. So that audience came to see him daily. Now they saw a different side to sports to it. And then the role model was slowly and steadily converting into a person who used to game. And then they saw it as a profession. Now if he plays a game really well, then I can also do that. Right? So if a person is watching him, now he watches in two perspectives. One is an entertainer and as a gamer. 2000 till 2018, from 2017 to 2018, it took us about 1.5 years to build an audience for 700,000 people. Right? So when you were managing him, so it took us 1.5 years to get 700,000 people out, and you were not growing at that time. So at that point of time, India needed some more role models, and then PUBG came in the picture, wherein the likes of Dynamo, the likes of Alpha Clash, the likes of Garibo, they came in the picture, right? And Mortal, of course, right? So all these guys came in the picture, and they were producing some great content. We came in that time. We said, okay, these are the guys who are working really hard on the content. Let us help them out with some personalized, customized acceleration growth program that we had learned throughout the period while we were growing that Carrie's live channel, right? So we knew that what not had to be done so that we can save on time. So we provided these guys with acceleration tools. We wanted to take game to the mainstream audience, and we want the entertainment part of it as well. So every other streamer was catering to a different side of the entertainment. It was growing on different aspects. Now, to that particular part, India had a different segment of role model in terms of a person who's playing an emulator PUBG mobile player, which is if you're playing on mobile, right, you are casting a game through the computer itself. Right? So that's one segment. It had one idol in that category. It had one idol that was Dynamo. It had one idol in mobile category, that was Mortal. It had one category as an idol in terms of entertainer in gaming, which was Carrie Minati. And then the environment was starting to grow up. And slowly and steadily, we also brought in one more female gamer because we had to build up that audience. That was Ankita for us. Ankita is doing fairly well right now. She's one of the most admired female gamers in India. Then we have Zaya as well. So all these guys have to get on board and come together as a leader which is out there. And we try to help them out in the process with the brands, with everything that has come in the picture, so that people see that they're earning money out of it. It's a profession.
Right.
So for example, if I'd also tell you, there's one more thing, that in the midst of the process, when we were signing people, as Anirudh sir said, that they're very young people, right? So you have to go and talk to their parents about it. Right. So we had a very hard time convincing them that this is a full-time career. We want to sign your child. He's doing really well. Right. Yeah. And then make him some money for that. Right. And this is a career which is a proposition. He'll be famous. He'll be making money. And this is a potential big thing out there. And your guy is doing really well. But they didn't understand that. So for that, we got with a particular plan in which all the streamers came together on one channel, and they did a thing called Clean Stream, in which they outrightly told people that this is a profession that we are in. We will be very clear in this speech that we are doing this. We are getting paid for this by a particular brand. Right? That brand was AMD, came out with Clean Stream. And this brand, if you want to start gaming, go and tell your parents to buy you a PC and then you can start. Because this is a profession, I'm really getting paid. So when your idols are there in the picture, in terms of male, female, or probably from different aspects of the country, north, south, central, somewhere, right? Your system is tending towards growth. So that was the entire plan with Ebullient Gaming also. So this is what we are doing right now, creating the superheroes in gaming in every aspect, in different languages, in different fields, in different dynamics.
That's wonderful, right? And you know, Anurag, just coming to you quickly on this one, how has this changed for you over the years? This is a fairly newer age, right? What Anirudh Nagpal is talking about is more of today there is a streaming service. Today there is social media. So I know about these icons. How have they played out for you in the past?
In the past, of course, the era I come from, there was no YouTube. So there was nothing called video content per se. But I think the way I look at streamers, I look them as an entertainment personality. Like we have stand-up comedy, movies, etc. I look this as a content which is for entertainment, not really for at least in India, I don't see the esports content in the streamer ecosystem right now, whereas abroad, there are a lot of streamers who actually do sessions for the players. They take their video, comment. Of course, it's a paid service, but $5. But that part is still not prevalent in India. So for Indian perspective, I look at it as a pure content as far as streamer goes. But I agree with what Sid also said and Anirudh also said. The esports as a content is being absorbed in a great numbers for the audiences. So traditionally at Riot, my understanding was that the viewership of Riot, 70% of those people don't play League of Legends, but they are the viewers. So it's a very clear distinction between a player and a viewer. Like all of us love to watch football, but how many of us play it on a daily basis? That's the analogy I like to put for
Actually, on that point, can you elaborate? This is open to again all of you. What is the distinction today in India from a player versus a streamer perspective? Right? Because some of the people on the audience might not know.
So the way I look at it, most of these people who are coming to watch the streamers is coming for the entertainment value that they bring to the stream. If you ask me, I watch all the streamers, starting from Carey and going up to Zaya and all the people, Sick Warrior, Raka. They are some of my favorite streamers, but I don't watch them for the gameplay. I watch them for the entertainment value they are getting in. So I think that is the same scenario, because if you look at the PC streamers, they bring a lot of variety on the games also. And trust me, in my line of work, I don't get so much time to play. Unfortunately, I'm admitting that fact on a live broadcast. I don't get that much time to play, but these guys get that entertainment value for me. That's the reason I watch these guys.
Salone, you had a point there as well.
Yeah, I think why content streaming in India has particularly taken off around esports is because if you look at the genesis of what esports is, like about a few global IPs dominate esports, right? You've got League of Legends, you've got Dota 2, you've got CSGO, and now Fortnite. There is no kind of Indian original IP which has that presence. So there is obviously the presence of these large global IPs. The second is teams, right? The teams that win have also been a handful of teams which have amassed a large amount of money. There are not many teams like a Team Liquid or OG. Gen G is, South Korea. All of these are outliers. So in the absence of that kind of other ecosystem, content becomes the only other thing. If you're interested in games and you like watching games, is what you do. So content streaming and influencers hence yields a new business model, which I think is particularly exciting for India as opposed to all of the other elements.
Right.
I can comment on that a little bit as well. Since I have a little more free time than Anurag, so I play a lot of PUBG right now as mobile myself. It's no different from when you were watching Sachin as a kid, right? And he had that little pelvic, motion that he did, and a lot of people didn't know what he was doing. So I was playing tennis ball cricket and doing the same thing, hoping that it's going to help me make a better cover drive, right? So you start observing how these guys play because you want to be like them. And some of them are just entertainment, so they're just giving you fun and games. But a lot of guys, like, if I don't play the sport, for me to understand the sport becomes much harder, right? So if you don't know what the different rules are, what the different, it becomes harder to understand what's going on, and which is true for any sport. Like if you go to a random country and start watching American football, like you don't know, right? If you haven't grown up with the sport, it just seems like why are the guys throwing a ball at each other? Right. So I think that element of it is important. So that's why players are important, and then they often realize कि हाँ मेरी level सिर्फ गली cricket तक ही है या मेरी level Ranji तक है. They know, and then they start realizing that. The great thing is that sitting at home in Ranchi, I can still make it. And I think that's the great equalizer of esports finally, right? Like, when Anirudh and I met sometime back last year, I told him one of the great dreams we had when we started Pocket Aces was to democratize the talent that is coming into, or the talent process that for entertainment. I always say मेरा last name Khan या Kapoor नहीं है, तो मुझे कुछ नहीं पता entertainment industry के बारे में. But same way now cricket के अंदर IPL did that, right? So now a middle class family also can say, there is a career, कुछ ना कुछ होगा तो Kings 11 के लिए खेल लेगा, 20 में तो आ ही जाएगा, right? Before, like my generation, it was like, there are 11 guys who play and most of them are from Bombay or Karnataka, right? How the hell will you get in as a Kashmiri guy into a cricket team? It seems like a far-fetched thing. But now that's no longer the case, right? IPL changed that. And leagues, the way Sid and Anurag, these guys are running, and they're running in different sports. So you may not be good at PUBG, but you may be good at Brawl Stars, right? Like that variety of people will come up. And then there'll be some guys who will be like, I can't do it as fast. And a lot of this is about tapping and eyesight and reflexes. So as you get older, like in every sport, you're no longer as good. So you will just see those guys become commentators. Like you will get Gaurav Kapoors of the world and Harsha Bhogle and their own version, right? So it's not going to be two people sitting in a comm box. It's going to be someone streaming and giving you their opinion. So I think that is just going to take off. And if you play PUBG Mobile, you know that these guys are across India, right? We were playing, me and our CTO were playing together along with, there's squads of 4 people. And he told me something in English. He's like, come from this side. And I think the other two people were from Haryana. And so they yelled at us. They're like, hame Angrezi nahi aati hai. So it's a weird thing because the rest of that game is not in Hindi. So they clearly know enough, but they want to communicate fast, right? So when you're watching the Indian team, he's always telling him something in Hindi, ki yahan dal, udhar dal, aage dal, piche dal, right?
Yeah.
So the communication is more intuitive. And so it really actually changes game design also. Like, how do you change that? What happens? So I think it's a very fascinating subject, and we are just at the start. I always say कि अभी
Absolutely.
Kapil Dev और Sunil Gavaskar के time में हम esports में. अभी सचिन आया
Probably even Chandra
और विराट पैदा नहीं हुआ.
Hey, sorry.
नहीं तो उससे आगे पहुंच गए.
I was reflecting on what you just said about commentary box, etc. There is this perception that today, if you're a gaming company, you have a lot of developers who are nerds or like sort of coding away and then zoning in and all of that, right? When I look at Sidharth, a company like Nodwin, and in the last PUBG Mobile thing, a majority of your team looks like you're Star TV, right? You're a production company, right? Majority of your workforce is in the broadcasting space, right? And what I love about this is, streaming as content means that you no longer need brands at an initial stage. Right? You're building an audience with or without brands because people are watching it, platforms are streaming it. Right? How has this journey been for you, especially over the last three years or so?
See, so if you were to look at the whole evolution of esports in India, and I'll touch upon some of the things that has already been said. Esports essentially in India was a CS Dota phenomena, which essentially means it was a PC English speaking phenomena. I think the first change that happened is PUBG democratized esports, and PUBG took esports truly to the masses, which is really taking cricket from, the echelons of test match into IPL T20. And that's the first thing that it did. So which means that the grammar changed, the language of communication changed. And like Anirudh said, it's not English anymore, it's Hindi. So when we put out PUBG mobile tournaments and we put out their streams, if we have X viewership on English, we have 10 to 15X on Hindi, because the language for PUBG is Hindi now, right? If you see Garena Free Fire, that's even taking it to further down to the masses. So tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 is where Garena Free Fire is going, and that's further democratizing esports now. So the grammar is now going across the country. So you have the absolute top, the gamers, the hardcore gamers, they will be PC, it's a niche. They are continuing to play strategy games. They are CS, Dota, League of Legends audience. Then you see a very, very metro phenomena, which is still Fortnite. I mean, we say Fortnite is not big in India, but when you look at, pockets in Gurgaon, pockets in South Bombay, pockets in South Delhi, that's still very, very Fortnite. All those kids, 11-year-olds are putting out their own Fortnite streams now. But the moment you see the rest of the country, urban, rural, semi-urban, that is all PUBG and Free Fire now. So I think with that evolution, what has happened is that, and this is what I was telling you, right? When we did the last PMCO in Thiagaraj Stadium, and we filled out that stadium, which a kabaddi or a badminton has not been able to do, we also broke YouTube that day with them about 1 or 2 million, 1.8 million concurrent viewers that came in to see that tournament. So I think that's a big shift which has happened, and that's, in my mind, that's what I'm saying. That's the tipping point. It's not how many people physically watch it. So for example, when India Premiership runs, the maximum we have ever seen in the final is about 5,000 people on ground in a Bombay. But we have seen that the peak viewership going to about 2.5 million on Hotstar for India Premiership final. And that's why esports is now become that broadcast sport. And in my mind, that barrier. So now it's for brands to come in and start participating, but we were not waiting for that. We were building that critical mass, which we have done now. And some of these games have helped us achieve that.
Yeah. You spoke about tipping points, Sid, and I want to open this up to all of you. Question is, in fact, the title of the webinar says during and post-COVID. some of you have access to numbers that others don't. Right? Like, what has this last 60 days been in terms of numbers? Are there any interesting stories coming up?
Yeah, it's been super. Yeah, like if I talk about the creators who are out there, they are creating some amazing viewership numbers which are out there. For example, if I talk about, so there are two streamers which I'll mention here, which is Dynamo and Free Fire. Dynamo and Two Side Gamers. Two Side Gamer is a Free Fire gamer, and Dynamo is streaming PUBG right now,
Right.
the primary games. So in terms of Free Fire, these guys were generating approximately 30 million views pre-COVID. Post-COVID, they're at 55. Which is so it's a huge jump which is out there. And then we have also the Dynamo Gaming. Yeah, so the Dynamo Gaming was generating 19 million views a month, which was in a slight drop before the COVID period. And then after the COVID period is at 33 million views a month. And he doesn't stream that quite often that he used to before. So he has been streaming quite fully about things, and now he has got other things as well to do. So the number of streams has decreased, but the viewership has increased a lot, right? So just two of the things which are the biggest guys in the esport in terms of Free Fire and PUBG will tell you that these are the numbers which are out there, which are shown super growth. And also I think that Anurag sir and Anirudh sir can also add on to it in terms of because Anurag sir has got a got Paytm in terms of game downloads.
I was going to go to Anurag on this one. What are the numbers you're seeing, Chief?
So one thing, Anirudh, don't call me sir, please. Yeah. We have discussed this a couple of times. Yeah. So just sharing our first tournament we did was in April last year, this year. And Clash Royale. And we were surprised at number of registration we got. We got 11,000 people who registered for the tournament. And out of that 11,000 people, first day around 7,000 people came to play, which was unheard. Unheard even by my standard for Indians. So much participation. We have launched the second iteration of the tournament, and still the numbers are same, man. That is what I'm shocked at. Once I thought it was a fluke, but seeing it happening again and again, I think this is the trend. So basically, one question which I saw in the part, what are we looking at in Paytm? So Paytm is majority working towards grassroots events as our primary target audience. As content has been democratized, we are looking at doing the same for participation and registration for esports tournament.
And Karthik, if you look at the more macro numbers, right? Like and we track this, right? So, for example, the two things which were very interesting to see, obviously game downloads, MAUs all exploded through the roof, but India's data usage alone during the last 3 months increased by 40%. In fact, what was even more surprising is that and not surprising actually, but home broadband connections increased by 150% over the last 3 months. And so that tells you that, and that's a long-term trend, right? Anybody who's now brought on a data connection or home broadband is unlikely to just about cut it right after COVID or the lockdown, right? Because that habit has been built. So all of these things is that, this unprecedented acceleration is going to have a permanent impact, and it's a permanent impact across the entertainment landscape, particularly having implications of games and content streaming.
Yeah, I think that's really important what Tarun just said, the permanent impact. I think some of the numbers, right? Look, if you were in a hyper casual game tournament, so you were doing that, we had that on our platform, we saw growth, and there's usage went up, right? So for whoever's playing games, your DAUs went up often from because people who were inactive or didn't have time to play now have time to play. So for a lot of people, every day is now a weekend, right? They're sitting at home, they don't have that much work to do because can't go out to work. So what do? You're back on the game, and it was always there on your phone. You just never played it. So your DAU to MAU and that sort of ratios start climbing. Viewership obviously is up across social networks, Netflix, etc. as well. But a lot of that viewership is often captured by news, because if you see the trending timeline, there's some news or the other. So the game share is, I would say, hasn't outperformed the way people think, because a lot of eyeballs have gone towards news as well. But I think the real story here is the permanent shift, right? Live streaming has become more of a behavior shift than before. We obviously started off as a really large live trivia app, and we did streams of over 500,000 concurrently on our platform. But the reality was, at that time, we felt if we opened it up to streaming, we just didn't know if that was a behavior people were comfortable with. Now we're doing this on live. This is a live stream. People are taking classes on live streams. Concerts are happening on live streams. So you are seeing that behavior will now shift. And I think that is a permanent thing we have to look forward to. I think there will be some bump down, like some of the, R2 numbers may go down to more normalized levels. And we did see that, like once Karnataka opened up, we did see some of the numbers more normalize a little bit more. So I think the permanent move towards, now everyone knows about TikTok. Now everyone knows about PUBG. That is a permanent change, because now that acceleration has happened. And I think that's the biggest benefit we all will get from this. And Karthik, like a lot of brands are now making more decisions quickly as well. So
Yes.
pehle kya hota tha,
Little too quickly than I would like.
Yeah, you have to come meet the guy, then you meet 3 times. We all used to meet too much and take less action. It was all talking. Now people are acting faster. I think that's also hopefully will be something that we take forward. It'll result in more output.
Right. Hey, we're at 3:55. I'm just going to quickly take some of the questions that we have for the remaining 5 minutes. I think there was one question Anurag, you answered the Paytm piece already. There was one question which is on how do you guys see the concept of gaming cafes in India? Do you want to take that?
Gaming cafes, I think,
Is that a thing?
I'll tell you very briefly. I think that gaming cafes are the next thing which is going to help the PC gaming to grow, because for mobile gaming to happen, the infrastructure was there, the internet and mobile, right? And now for PC gaming to happen, they need the infrastructure, which is the gaming cafes. If people don't have PC, they have to go to gaming cafes, because now we are being bitten by the snake of gaming, right? The next big thing is going to happen at gaming cafes itself. It's going to take some time, but they will play a very important role.
Awesome.
I have a little different take on gaming cafes. See,
yes.
Being a private equity guy for about a decade in my life, I can tell you one of the things that used to kill any business which was dependent upon real estate was the rentals in India. If your rentals are going to be 18, 20, 25, 30% of your revenue, you'll never ever make money in that business. I think what COVID has done is we are going to seriously relook at this whole work from home, need for commercial space and all of that, which essentially means commercial prices have to now normalize, which they were burning in my mind in some of the big cities in India. And that's going to be a big boost for gaming cafes. So infrastructurally, I think, and especially that's going to allow PC gaming to now go to the next level in India.
That's a very interesting take. You're actually saying that we will go to brick and mortar because of COVID.
For gaming. I mean, I'm just saying that while mobile, India will always be a mobile first country, but this will definitely give a boost to PC gaming. And that's going to be the proliferation of gaming cafes, which in my mind should happen because of normalization of commercial real estate.
Right. Okay, cool. Hey, this next question, I don't know, it's not the most strategic queries, but I really love the question. The person says, I'm currently working as a management trainee in a construction firm with a passion for gaming. I'm planning for a career pivot. I would love to know where and how I should start my career in esport management. I'm assuming he's talking about talent management. Is that right? What do you get? Any of you have any tips for this person?
Yeah, I do. jobs@pocketaces.in.
Good one.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. Okay, quick. Anirudh, staying with you. The next question is actually directed at you. How are the broadcasters reacting to production of content and telecasting of content on their platforms? I'm assuming they mean the Hotstars and the Sony Lives of the world. Probably.
Look, I think professionally produced events like the ones that Nordwin is good at, right? They're going to have different takers, right? Platforms like ours are actually trying to democratize that process in terms of giving access to people around the country to start streaming, right? And creating that kind of streamer ecosystem that is needed to have this sort of esports layer on top. So I think they're interested. They're a lot of them have esports content. You just can't find it, right? Like it's
Yeah.
hidden somewhere inside, so it's not often trending. For it to trend, they need to have viewers, right? So I think you will see their interest will increase over time in America. They're all bidding on it, right? NBA 2K League is being shown on ESPN there, and I think again, commercializing some of these properties and giving it that moneymaker moment, right? It's very important for every sport to have a pop culture moment. Otherwise, it doesn't blow up, right? Ravi Shastri winning an Audi, I didn't see it. I was born in that year. I still know it, right? Everyone knows Sachin's Desert Storm innings. Like, these key cultural pop moments. Javed Miandad hitting a six of the last ball. Like, everyone remembers that. Dhoni hitting the six in Bombay. Everyone remembers that. You need to have these moments break out. Like, I was in college in America when Moneymaker happened, and everyone in my dorm wanted Moneymaker to win.
Yeah.
Across the board. It was like crazy support for Chris Moneymaker. But that's because ESPN built that property with that stories, right? Like, you had Sam Farah, who's a crazy gambler. Like, he knows the best. He's David, he's Goliath, and Moneymaker is David, right? They built those things. And if you see American sports do that better than anyone else in the world, whether it's an NFL, whether it's an NBA, there's a reason their leagues are worth so much, because they build stories, right? Everyone's watching Last Dance now on Netflix. It's the biggest advertisement for NBA there could be, right? Like, now everyone's going to be supporting that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think we are actually building content as well. To that point, we have actually already written a show which is which covers this category, both fiction, non-fiction. We are actually creating a slate of content. I know Sid has a slate of content. So Anurag's creating a bunch of properties. So I think as we create more properties, more people will be interested in the rights.
Right. Wonderful. I'm just going to take one or two questions since we're over time. Salone, maybe we can come in on this, and so can the rest of you. What will make our government focus on esports ecosystem more? For say, Malaysian government has allocated 4.8 million USD. Blah blah blah. I think the point is, what is the government's role in this?
Yeah, I think there have been some very interesting interesting initiatives by the government which are now being done, right, towards gaming, not esports per se, but you've got the centers of excellence which are now being set up in Telangana, and there is a focus on bolstering investment towards gaming. But I'll put in my perspective, governments can be capricious when it comes to gaming, and we've seen this in China, right? And where the Chinese premier heavily cracked down on gaming, and for like 2 years there were no game approvals given because gaming addiction just went out of hand. So I think there is currently, because of it, the nascency of which gaming is, there is still a lot of positivity around it, but it will take 1 minute of negative press for it to change the wave. And so I'm always very cautious about saying that that there's going to be sustained government support and this is going to be a major focus of the government. I think perhaps not, and that's just my perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some need for regulation on some of the stuff that's happening, because a lot of it is unclear. Because the regulation on real money gaming, for example, is many years old, and so everyone's interpreting it in whatever way they like. And I think some clarity will be important. However, it's that whole thing, like less government, more governance. Like, you want that law to be clear. You don't want another unclear law.
Yeah.
So I think if they take the industry participants and they can get clear laws on I think that's fine. And the rest of it is, I personally am not a big fan of governments interfering in anything.
Yeah, and that's a thing which is more prominent in India, right? So globally, if you see, skill-based gaming, hyper gaming, RMG, and esports are very, very clearly defined separate categories. In India, they are all getting jumbled up and mixed with each other, and that's threatening the legitimacy of something like an esports, because RMG is also becoming esports and skill-based is also becoming esports, and that's a danger that we have out here.
Yeah.
And also, I'll just add, government's relationships with gaming across the world has not been very good. You've got the Japanese government involved and they banned gachas. European Commission got involved, they banned the loot boxes and the gaming mechanics. So, less government is, in my view, better, but yes, with clarity across what these various verticals mean.
Understood. Hey, I'll probably take one last question. I'm going to take this question and then probably broad base it a little bit more because it's a very interesting area. So the question is, teams like T1 have made investment in Mobi Analytics, device to improve player performance. Is there any similar steps taken by esports teams in India? And we know player performances, when it comes to sports, have broken through in the last 10 years. I'm talking about like physical sports. What is generally your take on this particular niche area?
So I think right now Indian teams they are still there in the nascent stage. They are getting the investments in. So I don't think they are ready for investments in other companies. But yes, I know of 2 teams who are looking to adopt tools like Mobilytics for their teams per se. But that's the status of Indian teams right now.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and still, I think it's very niche, right? Investing in team infrastructure is still very, very niche. I mean, globally, you've got people doing wearables and drinks for esports players, etc. All of that shebang. But I think it's super niche.
Yeah.
Any kind of
IBM has an AI-based solution on this now, and they are running all sorts of analytics, and they are running solutions for some of the top teams of really training their people and showing them what works, what doesn't work. But I think India is a little behind that because we are still getting our basic nuts and bolts right of the industry.
Yeah. Remember, I said it's like cricket, no? Ali Rani is our physio. So
no, but having said that, in sports analytics, India is actually the leader right now, right? And Australia and New Zealand are catching up to what we're doing. Hey guys, this is fascinating. I can do this for another 45 minutes, but we'll have to stop here. Thank you, Vidooly, a lot. I know a lot of you have asked questions on esports versus gaming and what constitutes and all of this. Some of you have asked questions on numbers. I'm assuming a recording of this will be up at some point. You can catch up because we covered that in detail at the beginning. To my panel, thank you so much. It was so much fun, and I hope to we can get together in some other forum. Salone, we need to do a separate show on the startup ecosystem.
Definitely.
For sure.
Let's do it.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
thank you, guys.
Bye now.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you.